My husband abandoned me to spend the night with another woman while I was pregnant. I, 21 female, pregnant, approaching week 39, and my husband, 25 female, is very nice and supportive and what I believe to be the ideal father. My pregnancy went especially fine, besides some physical accidents that left the baby completely unharmed. It was and still is the happiest time in my entire life. We did a lot of stuff together, like dining out, hiking, and strolling around, and generally got really close. But I also shut down a bit, detached my mind, and started not caring about hobbies and previous interests that much anymore. He sometimes commented on it, but only because he thought that I would have a problem with that. 2 days ago, I had bought a concert ticket for a band he really liked a month before, and he was all excited about it. But when he came home that day, exhausted from work, he was really tired and thought about skipping the concert. He had skipped quite a few things that he would have found interesting over the course of the last weeks and months because he was tired or enjoyed sitting at home with me, staring at the internet more. As I talked to him about it, because it had been a pain to get the ticket and he'd been so excited about these bands, he told me that he didn't want to leave me alone. He would stay with me, etc., etc. I told him that I didn't need that if I suddenly went into labor, I would still be at home when the concert was finished. And as I talked to him about it, because it had been a pain to get the ticket and he'd been so excited to see these bands, he told me that he didn't want to leave me alone. He would stay with me, etc., etc. JK, I told him that I didn't need that if I suddenly went to labor, I would still be at home when the concert was finished, and so on and so forth. He finally went and took my cell phone with him because it's the only one that can actually call people. He went to the concert, then called me when it was ready, and I picked him up and drove him home. Everything is fine. The next day, he had planned to go to a cultural event that one distant friend of ours hosts. Those are held around every week or every other week and are somewhat intellectual and high class. An attitude he very much enjoys because he can't relate to people our age and how they view life. But although he wants to go, he never ends up going because he decides that day that it's too late or he's too tired, quote unquote, or whatnot. Most of the time when he comes home from work and slips out of his clothes immediately, I know that he isn't going anywhere else. So it was on this day I knew he wouldn't go again. The second he entered our apartment, he told me that he felt a bit sick, so I rubbed his back and wrapped him in a blanket and suggested a hot shower. But since he had already started staring into Facebook and declined all my approaches, I left him alone. Now on to what made me mad. About an hour later, he told me that he was considering going over to, let's call her, Elle's place. Now, a bit of backstory might be needed here. We are both in a circle of friends who, to shortly explain it, occasionally meet up and perform freeform shows or plays. Elle joined at about the same time as we did. She is as old as my husband, most are older, and lives together with her boyfriend who's the head of a band and about 10 years older than her. This boyfriend is currently on tour. My husband has lately rejected all of my wishes to go to these groups' meetups together, although they're great fun and rather enlightening most of the time. I end up going anyway once and staying at home with him the other times. Now, I've already noticed that he had been chatting with Elle on Facebook for quite some time. She had also at some point recommended a book about gory, perverted unalivers fitting exactly into the dark gothic stereotype she obviously wants to fulfill. Okay. And my husband went and bought it immediately. Now it sits here and collects dust, but they really seem to get along well. I always had the suspicion that she couldn't quite stand me. That was weird because usually I'm the one who backs off when meeting new females, but I initially really liked her and we chatted quite well. But she seemed to get more cold and distant towards me over time. Several times I sent her mail to her and her boyfriend about something we agreed to do and that I really made an effort to plan, maybe an email. She just didn't answer because of all the stress from things that they had planned that my husband regularly attends and I do not, since I was once explicitly disinvited. So he thought about visiting her. She lives about 7 tram stations away. I was happy on the one hand because he managed to crash almost all of his friendships over the last few months, but I also was somewhat skeptical because, well, he had just decided not to attend a really interesting cultural and social event, and only yesterday made a big fuss about not wanting to leave me alone. But I thought nothing about it and said, yeah, why don't you go? In not even 5 minutes, he was all dressed up, and on his way. This was the fastest I had ever seen him prepare for going out since we have lived here together. He would call me if he needed to be picked up, like yesterday. Again, OP is, Now, first, I played some games on the computer. Then that got boring, so I surfed around, drew a bit, gamed again. The time was just flowing by, but getting slower and slower. At 10 p.m., he left between 6 and 7, by the way, I was already kind of frustrated and decided that if I weren't pregnant, I would now start getting wasted. Okay. But instead, I got sad and seriously angry. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Long story short, he came home at 1 a.m., an hour after midnight. I was already furious inside, but I kept calm. The first thing I heard from him was, "What? You're still awake?" It turned out that he had called, but the phone obviously was in the car or something. I already had noticed this, but didn't go down to get it because I couldn't use it to call him anyways. He had to walk home half an hour, which I absolutely expected since he had stayed longer than any public transport would go. Now we get on to the next section. Why it made me mad and how he described it so it got worse. It turned out that they just sat on the couch for 6 hours talking. He told me that they had such a good talk that it didn't occur to him to even leave. He obviously tried to call me in between, but since I didn't answer the phone, he decided he would just let his pregnant wife sit at home for a few more hours after that. Please note that I had no idea how long he would stay. He explicitly did not tell me when he left because he didn't know himself, so he thought it was fine and all right. I, however, think that if you just spontaneously pay someone to visit, that you do not stay until 1 o'clock in the morning. I was shattered and already in tears for quite a few reasons. First, I cannot remember the time that he just sat and talked with me for 6 consecutive hours. Sure, we might have done things together for 6 hours or longer, but actual actions are mostly interrupted by him flaming the place we go to or the people who are there, or him having some sort of idea of me that doesn't quite fit and explaining to me in every detail why it sucks, what I do and how I'm doing it. And if we sit at home, talk looks like him diving up from the computer screen that he's been glued to for quite some time, explaining a new line of thought to me, and then finishing the talk pretty fast to keep reading. God forbid I say something he doesn't expect that requires further discussion about the subject. Then he usually just gets defensive and tells me why his idea is right. But they just talked. They just talked together. Like he told me he didn't feel the need to look into the internet or a book while talking to her because I don't surprise him anymore in a conversation. He can understand me and thus has capacity free to process relevant information. This girl obviously manages to catch his interest for hours after hours, although he said if he knew her as well as me, he probably would be bored by her. Yeah, glad to hear that a random girl whose interest he had previously only regarded as shallow and uninformed manages to spark his interest in contrast to his pregnant wife. I asked him how they even got the idea to meet up. After informing me that he didn't like being questioned that way, he told me that Elle was describing to him how she didn't feel well to him over Facebook. And as he told her, he did not either. So she asked him if he would like some tea. This obviously was exciting enough to jump out of his chair and dash forward. Contrary to the countless times in the pregnancy where I didn't feel like sitting at home any longer and suggested going swimming, going outside, flying the new kite we got, enjoying the city, enjoying one of these several huge parks in our immediate proximity. No, either he was too tired, didn't feel well, or didn't want to go as far. He kindly informed me that for her, driving to the next district with 2 tram lines was not at all a huge deal, while going 4 stations with a single one huge park with me is just too much of a hassle to put up with once he sits at home and stares into the screen. And it was just so uncomfortable, sitting on the sofa the whole time because we have no sofa. Not sure what that means. I asked sarcastically, we indeed don't have one, but we have a comfy bed, lots of sitting pillows, and an awesome dining table we bought in order to make our home look all nice and classy for being a family. And yes, that was indeed the reason. It had not occurred to him once in the entire time that he could look into the internet or into a book. Something that he seems hooked to do when sitting around here. If he isn't really immersed in one book, he runs back to the internet almost every idle moment to check Facebook, read things and whatnot. But here, he talked to a person he didn't know and so had to listen intensely. He had bought some adult sodas because he didn't want to appear empty-handed, of course. After they had finished their tea, they drank 2 of those each. It's not that I'm angry at him drinking booze when I can't. That's why I bought the adult soda. It bothers me that he takes them as a gift when visiting a lonely, bored goth girl, and they decide to drink them both together in an atmosphere of extreme comfort that miraculously removes all worries about his pregnant wife. Would have left earlier if I had reached you on the phone, but since he didn't, he just decided to stay even longer. I asked him if he had at least talked to her about the play that I had planned, that I've until now sent 3 emails about and received only 1 answer on the second one, saying, "Oh, we don't have much time at the moment, but you keep doing what you're doing," as he previously had told me he would. No, but instead they listened to a 40-minute recording of their activity that happened a month ago and pondered about the details of it. So my stance on things, what's bothering me the most about the so effing important and interesting thing they do is that she, L, impersonates some kind of goddess of lust. There are also other girls who had impersonated that very goddess of lust, experienced ones that can do this very well, but somehow L doing it sparked interest in my husband because he feels that he has unresolved issues and he wants to tap into that sort of consciousness to find out more about himself.
What?
He had already told me this and asked me if I had problems if he would repeat that impersonation with her alone. I don't have any problems with that. I even encouraged it. But the only reason I did that maybe that experienced girl, or probably me, could also do it for him was that they both agreed on doing the dark gothy lust impersonation together up until the point where she told her boyfriend that they would be doing this, and he said that it was not a good idea, essentially forbidding it. So what makes me effing mad about that, just hanging out on the couch along with listening to the recording and discussing it, is that there was tension between them in the first place. Holy crap, I would even be okay if he took her home and effed her silly. If he told me, I have reassured him that several times, but instead he goes over to her place and just feels so effing comfortable just talking to her, leaving me alone. Now here's when it all crashed down on me. The thing is that he didn't do anything wrong. He visited her. They had a good talk. He came back not violating any agreement on the schedule because there wasn't any. And that's when it occurred to me that it was actually me who had a problem because I pretty much ruined my evening when he wasn't even back. I pretty much incited a furnace of hate and anger that I kept fueling with every detail that he told me about his evening. I can't deny that I am boring. I might know a lot, but most of it is factual knowledge, and I am a very introverted person, so I don't speak with much emotion. I also like to keep myself short. He always tells me that I show nothing of my thoughts and feelings, which might be true, but I'm used to just not flaunting them around, especially when I'm not being listened to. Some goth girl, she happens to be everything my husband likes that I am not, like small, girly, quirky, rock-styled, covered in tattoos, who obviously either disdains or flat out despises me, catches his attention with one half-hearted sentence. Something that I didn't manage to do with countless more creative suggestions for things he actually liked over the past few weeks. There must be something in my way to suggest things that's even more unappealing than a written "want some tea?" This effing girl sits at home while her boyfriend is on tour, complaining to a married man how she doesn't feel well, and directly reacting.
She's got a boyfriend too?
He's on tour.
Oh.
She's lonely. Sophia,
yikes.
she's lonely.
She's lonely and she's sick and she needs some tea and some company.
Have some tea with me. I want to talk to you because, like, my boyfriend, he's a rocker. He's on tour.
You have no one to talk to.
I need
I'm a goth girl and I have no one to talk to.
Oh my goodness. Yes, she asked how I was, quote unquote, but it would have been pretty rude towards my husband himself, a father to be, not to be interested in his offspring. I don't count that as niceness towards me. She obviously didn't care that I sat at home without any idea of how long my husband might be away, and also didn't care that he fruitlessly tried to reach me. It also did not occur to them to try and reach me over Facebook. I mentioned I'd be on the computer all evening, so we do have one method of communication, one line of talking. The way of communication both seem to follow all day long when they're not currently hanging out on the couch with each other. I hate that girl with a passion, although I tried my best to be nice to her, but instead she rubs me with her disdain and ignorance in the face about what I took my time to do, that if I trust her, actually interested her, and instead finds a time to just chat with my husband for hours. And I hate me for obviously being some sort of boring slob who can't even make the very same thing remotely interesting for my husband, Man, I must suck. We talked about this. No, you don't. And then I hate me for drifting off into a rage when he finally came home. I didn't even have actual accusations for him. It was more or less an empty rant about how I'm envious of her because she manages to keep his interest. I felt and feel like the stereotypical jealous wife one doesn't want to come home to. What made me cry even more in despair was the realization that Elle would either get to know from my anger, sending her the message that I am indeed jealous of her, although they just decided to hang out together like two befriended adults, and thus essentially dragging me into the position of the crazy wife who already is much less interesting than her husband, or not to hear about my anger, sending her the message that it's totally effing fine to invite a married man for tea and then hang with him until 1 a.m. in the morning. I didn't even want to talk about it that evening because I knew it was futile. My husband obviously had noticed that I was sobbing into my pillow and kept asking me what my problem was. When I told him to put himself in my situation, he did not manage to find out what was bothering. And on top of that, we have planned to go to the zoo today and take some photos. I still feel like crap even after sleeping, but it was a most wonderful and warm sunny day, and I managed to actually feel fine up to the point we went our own way. Once out of the door, he already started dropping vague hints about how the day was perfect and his mood would have been perfect too. I've decided not to react to such vague drama-stirring long ago. So later, he suggested he felt very hurt and torn because of yesterday. Obviously, he had a problem with the fact that I got angry. This pissed me off so much that I decided not to say anything because we were in public, and when we arrived at the zoo, it slowly slipped into a normal mood between us, but it was not resolved. It wasn't resolved at all. When we came home, he conveniently fell asleep right away. Update.